G'day, everybody, and welcome to this week's Scale Ups podcast episode with Nicola Fowkes. I've been trying to get Nicola on this podcast for ages. She's just been palming me off, face to the hand. What is it? Palm to the face, hand to the face. I don't know, something like that. Um, this conversation is really important because not only I know Nicola very well, we have worked together in countless companies. She was absolutely instrumental to the success of every business that I've led as a CEO. So we are like partners in crime, know each other super well. She used to run the people and performance function, but is now also a general manager, runs multiple entities herself. Uh, the reason this conversation is important is because it keeps coming up in conversations with founders that I know about acquisitions. And it really dawned on me that if you've never done an acquisition before, then you just don't know what you don't know, right? And so I've talked a lot about selling your business and how to maximize the sale value and got lots of experts on to help inform your thinking around that. But what about when you're buying a business? It's a big decision. It's got a lot of consequences, it's got great and incredible upside. It's an amazing way to access talent or access earnings or a whole range of other strategic reasons by customers, things that you might want to do an acquisition for. But how do you make sure you don't screw it up? Because the reality is you're buying a business that's full of people. And as we know, the hardest things are always relating to people. What's their mindset? What should your mindset be? What are some of the practical things you can do to bring them on board? Should you show them a plan about what you want to do with this business? Like, how transparent should you be? These are all questions that are quite nuanced. And I really wanted to start unpacking that today with Nicola. She's been doing this her entire life. She's been buying businesses, integrating businesses in all sorts of different industries. And most recently with myself in education. And I think you're really going to enjoy the conversation today. So have a great time listening, and I'll speak to you again next week.
Welcome to the Scale Ups podcast, where each week you get to hear Sean Steele, professional CEO, growth mentor, and advisory board chair, unpack the strategies that successful founders have used to achieve scale in their businesses. Stay tuned as he interviews the entrepreneurs who've made it, learns from industry experts, and follows a group of founders still striving to scale.
G'day, everybody, and welcome to the Scale Ups podcast, where we help first-time founders learn the secrets of scaling so that they can fulfill the potential of their business, make bigger decisions with greater confidence, and maximize the value and impact they can have in the world. I'm your host, Sean Steele, and my guest today is Nicola Fowkes, General Manager of Operations at Adventure Co. How are you today, Nick?
I'm fantastic, thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I look, this may be the world's longest setup, but there needs to be some context for our conversation. So stay with me, folks. It is actually important because Nick and I have known each other for 8 years.
There's history.
There's history, right? So we've worked together full time in 2 different companies. We have been partners in crime for 6 of those 8 years. First of all, with Online Courses Australia Group, which was a fast-growing education business acquired by a public listed company that you and I had all sorts of really interesting times in, story for another day. And then we worked together to establish and scale Adventure Co. For another publicly listed group, which has since gone private, but over 4 years from 2016 to 2020. And that was really driven by yourself, myself, John Lang. You came on board to lead the people and performance function, but now you're accountable for leading a whole bunch of the acquisitions in the group. And John, we brought on board to lead the IT training business that we bought. And he's now also running a number of acquisitions, and myself, annoying you two every day as the group CEO, setting strategy, making sure that you and John and I, as a bit of a sort of 3 amigos, had what we need to mentor the leaders of the acquisitions that we bought or install our own management and help them develop and execute strategies to fulfill their potential. Now, you and John are both still at Adventure Co., but if we cast our minds back to 2016, right at the start, it was like you, me, a couple of other crazy risk takers who we managed to convince to come on this journey. And we started by onboarding 2 small education businesses that were doing domestic and international students in residential and commercial construction stuff like carpentry and bricklaying and all sorts of things. And you and I had a very steep learning curve about what any of that was.
Yes.
That business or that combined business was doing like less than 5 million rev. It was probably, however you look at it, maybe it was losing money. It wasn't doing a lot. Fast forward to today, and after a whole bunch of organic growth and many acquisitions, including the acquisition of one of my recent clients, Nexecure. You guys can thank me later for that introduction. The business is now doing over $60 million in revenue and 20,000 students a year, and it's still scaling. So it was, and it is, an incredible journey. And you and I learned a huge amount together about something very specific that we're talking about today, which was finding businesses, screening businesses, and buying businesses. But in reality, that's the fun and the nice part. And there's not really a lot to lose in that sort of early stage. Where the value is obviously created and lost is actually how you onboard them, how you lead them, how you develop strategy, how you execute the strategy. And I know we're going to have a bunch of people listening today who at some point love the idea of maybe doing an acquisition, maybe bolstering their business. Okay, maybe it's a reverse merger, but probably buying another business, hoping that their business plus the other business make three, one and one making three, and that the businesses become better together and they find synergies. But you and I know that lots of stuff can go wrong very quickly. So today, after that massive setup, the goal of today is to chat about how to not screw up businesses that you just spent money on acquiring. From a people perspective in particular, what do you look for in due diligence when you're thinking about the people behind the business? Like that, you can always get financial boffins to help you look at the numbers and the market and all the rest, but you are buying people. Essentially, you're buying a group of people and hoping that their talent is going to continue to deliver outcomes for you. So what mindset do you need to be in? What mindset are they in when you're coming in as the new owner? And what are the implications of that? How do you practically bring them on board so that they don't all of a sudden think you're the most awful person in the world who's just bought their business and now they all want to pack up their toys and go home? What are some of the things that you've learned over time? That is really my goal for today. How does that sound to you? And did I miss anything that you think is important in the context, the setup bit?
No, I think that's great. I think there's definitely a lot to talk about. We could talk about for hours, but we'll keep it short and sweet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think from our journey, we've definitely there's been highs and lows and tears and laughter, and that's all really part of an acquisition process. Nothing goes smoothly, and that's what we need to prepare for.
That's true. It's like, what you can guarantee is that however you think it's going to go, it's not going to go like that, but it'll go like something. And so the
Hmm.
question is, how do you
Exactly.
respond? How do you tack and change to the something?
Yeah.
So my first question for you is, and your name, comes up a lot when I'm actually mentoring founders because I always have a little Nicola on my shoulder thing, coaching me from the side, going, Sean, you need to be thinking about it this way because I've spent most of my professional life having that in a real life version of Nicola. But one of the things that you have always really talked about, and I talk about with clients that I support, is this difference between HR functions versus people and culture functions versus people and performance, and just the language around that, and what does that mean, and why is it important? You're always very deliberate about those terms. Can you just talk me through the differences from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit terrifying that you have a Nicola on your shoulder, but we'll we'll move past that. Look, I think HR has had a bit of an identity crisis over time. So for the last probably 10 years or so, perhaps even more, the function of traditional HR has changed significantly as businesses have changed. Their direction, their focus to really look at the people they've got engaged within their business. So traditionally, HR was a function. If you got a call from HR, it was bad news. They moved the paper around. They
Yeah.
were the fun police. All of this sitting up in a crystal palace, and you went there when you had a disciplinary issue, or you perhaps met them in the recruitment process as well. So that's
It's
a
like
very
being sent to the principal wasn't like, "You're gonna be sent to HR. Watch out,
yeah.
HR is gonna have a chat to you."
Exactly. I'm going to report this to HR, which is a very traditional approach. And yes, those industrial relations and employee relations aspects do need to be addressed within a business. But
Mm,
when we're talking about the movement from HR to people and performance, we're really trying to make that move a more proactive approach. So HR is not reacting to the business, but is a step ahead and always looking at what's going on and where the problems might arise, where the opportunities are, how we can engage people better. Um, the HR function definitely moved to people and culture, and that's great. That's definitely a move to creating an environment where people engage. From my perspective, culture is actually not built by one department. It is built by every single person in the business. We all
mm.
know that if we make a bad recruit, or even two or three, it can significantly change the culture of teams or businesses very, very quickly. So culture is it's definitely a priority within the people function, but I like to see culture as a whole of business approach. And so that brings us on to people and performance, which is, I guess, where a number of organisations are moving to. Um, Now, when we're talking about performance, we're really talking about what does success look like? And what does success look like for the business? What does success look like for every department, every team, and every individual? So, if we're all aligned in what success looks like in all of those aspects, then we've got a really cohesive team moving forward to achieve the goals of the business. So, that's why we focus on people and performance, because it's really supporting leaders to ensure that we're doing everything to align success.
Mm, such a great description. A couple of things that bubbled up to me there. One is just that concept of, not recruiting for cultural fit, but sort of cultural contribution. Like, what is this person? To your point, each individual in that culture is going to be influencing what the culture's like, and every single hire either adds or detracts something from. It's a moving thing, and you may design it, sort of mentally at the start, and you're conscious about how it's being created, no question. But it's also organically evolving with the people that you hire. Second thing was just the context of performance. It's rare. It's still rare in this day and age. Like, I feel like you might have been a bit of a pioneer, but it's still rare to be having a conversation with a people professional about performance. But the thing that I love that is the glue of all that is success. What does success actually look like for the individual and for the organization? We're generally pretty good as leaders about talking about what success looks like for the business. This is where we're trying to go, and these are our goals, and blah blah blah. But how often do we get really clear, as opposed to, you look at job descriptions and you go, wow, that's just a big list of tasks. What does success look like for the individual? How do they know if they're succeeding? Is it just completing tasks? Because it's not a very exciting job.
It,
And if
it,
you're going to get,
It's not a very exciting job, and it doesn't allow people the opportunity to bring themselves to the party
yeah,
either. So, when we're talking
yeah,
about success, we want people to bring all of their skills, knowledge, experience, their personal
mm,
attributes to what
mm,
success looks like. So, when we're talking about, we don't use job descriptions, we really talk about what success looks like in your role and the key capabilities, experience, knowledge, etc., that you need to bring to the role to achieve the core objectives of the role.
yeah,
How you do that is what creates innovation. So,
mm,
job descriptions may actually hinder
yeah.
innovation and creativity. Something where we're focusing on what success looks like allows that creative side to really come out in people and try new
And
things.
if That's it. And if anyone wants to listen to, you want to kind of think about this a little bit more deeply, and you go back to the Liz Wiseman episode, the author of Impact Players, she talks a lot about how you help this person understand what success looks like for them, so that they're clear about what that is. And then, of course, they're going to want autonomy, as much autonomy as is reasonable, over the how. But if you don't set up what success looks like in the first place, pretty hard for them to know kind of where to head, and then you're just kind of waiting for them to do things wrong, and
Hmm.
it's telling them when they do stuff wrong. It's like, that's not very helpful.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
like, so let's get into actually the nuts and bolts of acquisitions. You and I have spent a lot of time looking at businesses to buy. We've bought some, and we always used to split up our accountabilities amongst our team around different sort of work streams. So we might be looking at any acquisition and looking at the cash and the finances, how the reporting is going to work, how the integration is going to work at a sort of maybe legal contracts, entities, all this sort of stuff. But people, sales and marketing, product, but people was always a stream on its own.
Hmm.
What kind of stuff do you look at when you want to do due diligence on the people side? Like, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, well, I think traditionally people go straight for culture. What is the culture of the organisation? And so they dive in there looking for some sort of indication or a statement from the vendors about what the culture is in the business. But actually, when you're looking at the people side of things, yes, you do need to check, the IR activities and all that. Legal side of it to make sure that you can tick that off. But more important than that is you can get some really great insight by looking at the documents that are provided to you within the business, and not the HR documents, but the actual operational documents across the business. So we always start with an organizational structure and we look at how that's sitting now. Now, that sounds pretty boring, but an organizational structure is actually how the business works. So it's not a representation of reporting lines, it's far more than that, or it should be. So you can look at things like, what is the reporting line structure? How many direct reports do people have? And that's just the start of it. The organizational structure is really how people group together to complete the tasks that are required to achieve success. So when we're
Mm,
looking at that, we actually need to look at the organizational structure along with the operational processes, and then overlay that with what the client journey is. Now, what we're looking at there, and what we're always looking at when we're looking at people due diligence, is alignment, because you need to know if you're going to walk into a business where it's siloed, where there's conflict between teams. That's a difficult thing to change. So we're looking for alignment. Sometimes we'll look at businesses and we can see there's some interesting ways that they're structured. And when we look at operational processes, you'll be able to tell that there's a lot of what we call pinballing. And that means that an activity comes in that needs to be completed, and it's received by someone, flicked to another department, flicked over to another department, and comes back. And that just creates huge amounts of inefficiency. And you can guarantee there'll be frustration in the culture along with that, as people are
mm,
relying on other people getting back to them and moving them around. So that's sort of that's those sorts of details that you look into. You can really pick out where your operational issues are going to be as you move into the business. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world if the structure's not right, but it allows you to prepare effectively for the acquisition itself, and to be really aware of what resources that you need within the businesses. You can have a look at, is it top heavy, which means there's a lot of strategy talk going on? Is it bottom heavy, which means that people are very busy being busy? And just really looking at that structure in a great amount of detail, but overlaying it with other aspects of the operation. The people side should never be separate from the operational side. They
mm.
connect together, and without looking at the both of them together, then you create a silo in itself.
And so if you see that, when you see that pinballing, okay, you look at a structure and you go, wow, there's a lot of silos going on here. For example, I don't know, sales has got a separate leader, marketing's got a separate leader. Oh, by the way, they actually report into two different people, one, and you're going, oh, sales and marketing probably aren't actually talking or working together very,
Hmm.
very, cohesively in that business unit, for example.
Hmm.
What, when you see the structure that might suggest that there's a lot of pinballing or inefficiency going on, what does it mean to you, or what questions does it raise for you when you're thinking about due diligence?
Mm,
Are you going, oh, yeehaw, opportunity, like I can see efficiencies that are going to be gained here, and so maybe there's going to be some savings, but it's going
hmm.
to be a whole bunch of work, and probably we're going to have to reorganize this leadership structure over here? Like, what are you thinking when you see
Mm.
that?
Yeah, it's all of those things. So we definitely look at there's some key aspects that come out. If there is all of this pinballing going on, you can guarantee there's frustration. So it gives us something to work with very quickly on an acquisition, is to address the frustrations within the business.
Mm,
It's about
okay.
digging down and going, okay, is this a people problem? Is it a systems problem? Is it a process problem? What
Mhm.
is that? And so you just keep digging. So the structure is the first piece, then you highlight where the issues are, and then you keep digging to exactly where those problems arise.
Yeah.
And then it helps you set the plan, and it helps you also ask questions of the vendors, and if you're lucky enough to get a management meeting with some of the leaders, ask questions about how that structure came about. If you're hearing things like, oh, well, those two didn't actually get along, so we separated it out, that's not a problem with the two people. That's a decision making process that is
Mm,
evident in the business. So if
yeah.
they've made that decision in the business, then that's how they go about decision making. And then that again helps you figure out the operational aspects of the role.
Mm. Wow, so interesting. And and just for the avoidance of doubt for somebody who's thinking about this for the first time, because if you haven't done an acquisition, you don't realize all this stuff, right?
Hmm.
Y- You want to be walking in with a plan. Now, the plan is going to change, no question.
Hmm.
The plan is going to be informed, it's going to evolve, but you still got to walk in with a plan because you've got to know how am I actually going to, how deeply am I going to be integrating this business? Where do I think the changes are going to need to be made? Because the worst thing that you can do to a business that you've just acquired, I think, is have the process just go on and on and on ad infinitum. Like there's no finality. There's no like, okay, we've done the stuff that we're going to do because everyone's wondering what you're going to do, right?
Hmm.
What are they going to do when they come into this business? And it
Hmm.
feels like it just keeps going and going and going. People get really tired, don't they? Sort of,
Oh,
it's a major reason to increase their frustration rather than, to your point, if you see some frustration areas and you're thinking it'd be great to be able to come in and get some quick wins with these guys so they
hmm.
realize we're actually there to help them and help them do their best work and find a great new home.
Hmm.
Knowing what some of those frustrations might be and then being able to resolve them is going to help you build some credibility and some trust with them, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And by being able to pinpoint through the use of documents and vendor discussions, you can, by pinpointing where you think the problems might be, you can know what other information to ask for through the process. So you're going 3, if it's a quick acquisition, 6, 9. It can go on and on and on. You've got this opportunity to keep digging and keep requesting information. And that's what
Mm,
looking at that, you can be able to really drill down and get the information that you're looking for so that you can set the plan moving forward. So if you think there's frustrations on efficiencies or systems, you might be able to request an employee engagement survey in which you can drill down on those questions a little bit more. And that
mm,
insight allows you to really move quickly once you acquire the business. You still need to listen and you still need to understand, but having sort of a one-page strategy to go in with, this is the process that we're going to undertake, and this is our big goal, and having that one page allows the people to anchor to something, which is what a lot of people forget. Um, in a change process, it's very, very difficult for the individuals involved if you don't give them something to anchor to. And that's sort
yeah.
of where a one page strategic plan, which may change 3 months in, gives people something to work with.
Nice. So, like that really, it kind of links to my next question, which is about the mindset that you need to be in and the mindset that they're actually going to be in. Because if you've never done an acquisition or you've never been through one before, you've never been part of a company that's been acquired, like you need to understand what's going on in their psychology. Talk to me about that and how are they thinking about this? And therefore, as the buyer, how do
Hmm.
you need to be thinking about it from a sort of,
Mm.
I guess, mindset sort of perspective?
Yeah, I might flip that and start with the buyer,
Cool.
because if you've gone through 6 months, 9 months of DD, and you finally made this acquisition, it's because you believe it has something that will help you build the business. So as you're coming in, you're excited. You've got a plan. You know the details. It couldn't be more exciting for you. You've just
Hmm.
bought a brand new business. Uh, on the flip side of that, you've just taken on the livelihood of every person who works in that business. And those people depend on that business for their livelihood. So there is absolutely going to be fear involved in an acquisition. So balancing out those two different perceptions of the situation is really important, because as we move in, this is the best thing that's happened to us. We've got an acquisition, there's so many opportunities, it's going to be fantastic. We definitely need to be motivational and enthusiastic, but we've also got to be really, really aware of that mindset. And I think that's where it's really important to really focus on uh, the difference between project management and change management. Now,
What
both
do you mean
sort
by
of
that?
they're both sort of intertwined, but project management is the process. You get your Monday board or whatever it might be. You write a big list of things that you're going to do, and it sort of ties into that one-page strategy, and you've got the 100-day plan, and you are good to go. Um, that's project management.
Mm,
Change management is the changing of people, the changing of systems, which basically you need your people engaged in. So, what we're talking about is hearts and minds. So, project management is minds,
mhm,
change management is both of those things. It's like a whole of brain experience.
mm,
And where
mm,
people tend to go wrong is thinking it's just one or the other. So
Yeah.
we're excited. We're going to share that enthusiasm with you, but we're not going to give you any details of the strategy or the project. Or we love project planning. We're very detailed. We're going to put in this project plan. There's 500 tasks on there. It's very exciting, but we don't focus on the emotions involved in change. So it is a sort of a balance of both of those things. But 70% of change management projects fail. That's the sort of widely accepted. Now, that either means that we're all crazy taking on change projects, or that somehow we see some real value in that. So when we're talking about a 70% failing, it is generally because we focus too much on one side of the brain or the
Mm,
heart or the mind, however you want to describe it. It's
mhm.
both aspects. So as you're going into an organization, you need to have both sides um,
Yeah.
engaged and ready to
And
move
so what
on.
would be some examples then practically of how you make sure that you've got that in place? Like what sort of things would you do to make
Hmm.
sure that you've engaged both hearts and minds in that process?
Mm.
Because to your point, you got a whole bunch of things. You're walking in with a plan. Like
Yeah.
you think you know what you're going to do, and they're
Hmm.
walking in going, "Oh my God, we just got bought. I didn't even know that yesterday, and as of today, I've got a new owner.
Hmm.
Like, oh, I wonder what they're going to do to me. Is my job safe? Is this company going to be? Are they going to strip out all the people? Like, they've got so many questions and so much fear. How do you
Mm.
what do you do practically to build that?
Mm. And it's true, there is a lot of fear. Even those ones that are enthusiastic and on board, there's still fear because
Mm,
it's unknown. You've been working on this as a buyer for months and months and months. This is
yeah.
brand new to them. So you've got people who react in different ways. And that's where you've got to be really aware of the different ways of addressing it. So you've got people who will. Um, Take off, not interested in being a part of it, people who are just frozen. So it's that fight or flight, freeze response.
Mhm,
That's what you're
mhm,
dealing with. And every single person is going through that process. And it takes some time. So, practically, what do we do? Um, it's obvious that we communicate, communicate, communicate. Um, we can do all of that, but it's more than just communication. It's actually storytelling. So when you're going through a change process, you're actually taking people through a journey. I hate that word, but it's the only one I can think of right now.
mhm,
You're
mm,
taking them through, and you need to make sure that you're storytelling, letting people know the background, what the goals are, what's happening now, and how that impacts the goals. So you're always explaining through story where we are
mm,
now and where we're heading to. Um,
mm,
so that's really important. But from a communication perspective, I always use the 3x3 communication technique. I don't know if I made that up or I stole it from someone else. I have no idea. I think I learned about it whilst I was studying. But anyway, that means you need to let people know your key communication points 3 times in 3 different ways. So important messages should be told at least 3 times. Don't worry about repeating yourself,
mhm,
because there's this wonderful thing called perception that people take on. So if you just tell people once, there's perception and talking and influence that happens behind the scenes. So it's always 3 times to let people understand and then ask questions, and then in 3 different ways. So you might have town halls, emails, small group communications, and
mhm,
you're just telling the same story, letting people
mhm,
understand where we're going, as characters
mm,
in this business. So that's really important, is that 3x3. So when you come into an acquisition, you have your 100-day plan. Make sure part of that 100-day plan is engaging with the people. So yes, you need the initial email. Hooray, can you imagine getting that email as an employee
mm,
going, oh, we've just been acquired. Oh my God, what does that
yeah,
mean? So you've
yeah,
got to be up there in front of the people early.
quick.
Communicate with them. If you're able to do that with the vendors, even better. That's a nice transition. So think
Mhm,
about that as you're moving
yeah,
forward. And so get up in front of the people and start talking to them, and really focus on you're learning about them just as they're
mm,
learning about you. And that
mm,
creates an environment where you can learn from each other. So those things are really important. in the beginning, town halls. I think we did a road show once, Sean. Do you remember that?
I will never forget that roadshow, Nico. Like, I'll never forget being in Melbourne in the hotel room, like night before, we're just, we're working through all the comms. Like, what are we going to say to people?
Yeah,
How is that going to roll? Because we're going to
yeah.
have to do a teleconference with 150 people or something,
Hmm.
and you have to explain to them, hey, hi everyone, we're the new owners, we've just purchased you. Unfortunately, your CEO is not going to be here, maybe after tomorrow. But we've got a new one, or I'm the new one, or
Hmm.
whatever the message is. Like, there's a lot of information for you to manage and to think through. And one of the
Hmm.
things I really love, just to interject for one moment, that you said is it reminded me of the metaphor of pacing and leading.
Hmm.
I always found the visual of a greyhound race. I don't condone greyhound racing, so please don't anyone attack me. But when you think about where the automated rabbit thing is placed near the greyhounds, if you start that thing, 100 meters down the track, and then you let the greyhounds out, they're all just going to start looking at each other, going, "Oh, what? There's a rabbit somewhere." They can't even see the rabbit; it's too far away.
Hmm.
And if you have the rabbit so close that they come out of the gate and they grab that rabbit straight away, everything stops. They've lost momentum. They think goal's already been achieved. And so this concept of pacing and leading is always about, like, meet people where they are, and then you have to be able to provide that sense of where we're going, but only at least like the next bit. It doesn't have to be all the way around the track. We don't have to describe absolutely everything, but we have to meet them where they are and then
Hmm.
move it out. Meet them where they are and then move it out. So to your point around storytelling,
Yeah.
it's like, well, where are they going to be right now? So
Hmm.
to your point, if you don't give them context and background, and then think about, well, you might be feeling this right now. You might be feeling that right now. You might have these questions right now. Let me talk to you a bit about where we think this is going, but we're going to iterate together. If you can't connect that and you start with, in the next 5 years, we're going to be this and we're going to be that, and like you're way down the track, and then the greyhound's coming out, going, "What? There's a rabbit out there? Like what?" They're all
Yeah.
looking at each other, going, "Huh? I don't get it."
Yeah, exactly. And the storytelling thing is exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
People need to start at chapter one to understand what's going on, and then we move through all
Yeah.
the chapters. And so it's exactly the same process, but that pace and lead is just so vital. And I
Mm,
think a lot of people, are so excited because, when we're talking about people who have acquired a business, ready to go. And so you're so enthusiastic, but that in fact can have a really negative impact if you're not pacing out the change process.
mm, mm. And so then what about, so I guess it kind of leads into my next question about how you bring them on board. We
Hmm.
started talking about that. So we're kind of naturally moving through the dialogue, but
Hmm.
the things that you think about that are really important to be able to practically bring them on board, because you may want to be making changes that
Hmm.
not everybody's going to love. Like, that's the reality, right? Sometimes you're looking at a
Hmm.
business where you go, actually, we've got a whole bunch of duplication of roles
Hmm.
here. We've got 3 HR people and they've got 3 HR people, and we've got 2 of these and they've got 2 of those, and you're thinking, oh, there's a cost saving opportunity here. That's part of where you can make money
Hmm.
in acquisitions. But that's not something that they're super excited to hear about on day one. Hey, guess what, everybody? We've
Yeah.
got the best people, and you've got terrible people, and therefore our people will be better than yours. And so you guys, you're out. Like, that's
Hmm.
that's not a great idea. So talk to me about how you think about bringing them on board in circumstances where maybe not everything that they're going to
Hmm.
experience is all rainbows and daffodils.
Oh, absolutely. And there is some really tough acquisitions where changes get made very early on. Normally, when there's a change of CEO and that sort of thing, be brave. You know, understand where people are coming from, but don't hide behind just because it's a difficult decision or it's a difficult change.
Mm,
You've got to be brave and just be aware where people are coming from, but they will respect your authenticity rather than trying to keep everyone happy.
mm,
So
yeah,
that's the biggest advice is be brave um, without being callous. So
yeah,
there's certain approaches that can be quite harsh. But if you're looking at a growth organization, that's the type of acquisition where you need to be brave, make the big decisions. Um, just be careful as you move forward. You've made all these decisions in DD. You still need to learn about the business. You need to learn about the people. The operation lives and dies on the people. So you need to still learn. You might have been wrong in DD. When you dive
mm,
in,
so true.
you always learn so much about things that you thought, is this going on? Or I think this is a situation. They go, oh no,
Yeah,
that's that's why. And you go, oh, okay. So
Yeah.
so be so be
Backtrack.
yeah, communicate a lot, ask the questions, keep the information that you learn at DD and keep digging and digging and digging.
Yeah.
I think it's really important as you're moving in an acquisition to have an onboarding team, even if it's you and one other person. So, probably in smaller businesses, you think, oh,
Yeah.
I'll do everything. Um,
Mm.
Always have an onboarding team. It
Mhm.
allows the team to sort of spread out and get different perspectives and to see things differently and to help you as the leader to really get a wider view of what's going on.
Yeah.
So,
As you said, because your plan is essentially made up of a whole bunch of hypotheses
mm,
of which you have not yet tested.
correct. Yeah,
So yeah,
exactly.
you absolutely think you're at the end of that and you're like,
Mm,
great, we know exactly what we're going to do. But then you
hmm
get in the reality, to your point,
mm,
could be quite different. And so if you don't have those different, yeah, and it's actually quite an emotional experience. Isn't it? Like I remember our
mm,
first acquisition, and you're so present in your part of it or what the things
hmm
are that you've got to do, you absolutely lose visibility of what else is going on, what other conversations are happening, how other people might be feeling. So being able to tag team
mm.
works exceptionally well, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So always make sure you've got that onboarding team and you're aligned and you're communicating and really driving forward. We talked about having the strategy, just a one pager to anchor people. That's really really vital as you move forward. One of the other areas that is also important. Is getting people involved from the very beginning. So we are big believers in working groups.
Mm,
You can call them project groups, whatever it might be. Changes you want to make, you need the people to make those changes. So that's
yeah.
why we use working groups a lot to engage people, and you actually end up with a better product. So you've got to be cautious of throwing that baby out with the bathwater, as the old saying goes. Um, that you bought this business for a reason. So just be careful that you don't get lost in what you're doing and throw some of the good stuff out because it's impossible to get back again.
So
So,
true. I remember the first acquisition I was involved in, I think was in 2012, maybe. And we set up a sales and marketing committee, and I'd never really given it any thought because I hadn't done acquisitions before. But we had a sales and marketing committee made up of sales and marketing people from both businesses. It
mm,
was like, here's the things that we're trying to achieve. Here's the synergies we're looking for, but actually we want both sets of teams in it. And I thought that's so clever, and it was, and it was because all of a sudden you learned in that it's like everybody had a common goal, even though it was a bit awkward, of course, at times because it's like people are still sniffing each other out.
mhm,
But it created so much because both of those sales and marketing teams were going to have to end up implementing those things to achieve the synergies that were expected
mm,
as part of the business case. And I think one of the reason that sometimes people, when I think about some of the stuff that we'd done, one of the worst things that you could do is make the starting assumption that just because you know your people, if you think there's cost savings, for example, or duplication of roles or something, making the assumption that your people are going to be the best people. It's like, what are you buying for this business for? You might have I don't know, an accountant or something,
mm,
and you trust the accountant because you've had the accountant for ages and so on, and you go, you know what, we probably only need one accountant for this entire group, and now there's two accountants. Don't fall into the trap of making the assumption that just because you've got an accountant, that your accountant is the best accountant. You might find if you walk in with that, it's going to permeate all of your communication as well, isn't
mhm.
it? And you might find exactly the opposite. You will find you're buying this business for a reason. There's all these,
Yeah,
the team is producing results.
yeah.
So
There's diamonds in there, but you've
big
got to
time.
take the time and find those people, find those systems, and it might be you might find some areas of the business that you go, why didn't I think of that? But you've
Mm,
got to be looking for it because we can tend to just human beings in general. We like to
mm,
go with things like us, people like us. This is what I know, and we can move down that pathway and forget everything else. But in actual fact, the value is outside of what we already do. That's where the value is.
mm. Awesome. Anything else that you didn't get a chance because I kind of cut you off about?
I'm used to it, Sean. It's all right.
I was going to say, she's like, well, that's nothing new. About just because I get excited
Yeah.
about how we bring them on board. Anything else that you wanted to
Yeah.
get
I
across?
just probably one other thing is another old saying is build it and they will come. Do not use that philosophy at all. Because if you build something, yeah, they'll come and have a look at it and go, okay, thanks, bye. So
What do
if
you
you,
mean by that? Give
I
me
mean,
the
like if you don't engage people, and you build a new system. And it's wonderful. It's a great new
yeah.
system. Actually, we're just going to plonk our system in here. Yeah, it's fantastic. Um,
Mm,
what will happen, so what you're saying is we built this, and that's saying build it and they will come. They will not
mm,
come, because it has to be whatever you're building, whether it's a system, a team, an organization. You need to educate your people, and that's a bit that tends to fall out of all DD. So for all acquisitions. So whether it's training, education, knowledge, people forget to train their people during onboarding. Um, and
mm,
that's from everything from who are we, how do we operate, to who are you, how do you operate. So the education across teams is so important. The training of we're doing this now. Great, that sounds fantastic. If you don't train and educate and spend time investing in that, you're expecting people to do it just because you built it. Does that make sense?
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, I know you and I could talk about this for hours because we have spent, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of
Way
hours
too much
together
time.
looking at businesses, buying businesses, integrating businesses, etc. So we've done this quite a few times.
Yeah.
But when you reflect back
Mm.
on some of the kind of key principles, key lessons, whether things to do or
Mhm.
things to absolutely not do that you think, things that really create value or things that massively lose value, what are some of the key lessons that you think,
Mm.
given you have done, I mean, this is before we ever met,
Mhm.
you've been doing this for years. You were doing this in the hotel industry, and so you've done you've done a lot of acquisitions
Yeah.
in your time. What are some of the things that you think are big lessons for people to really take home?
Yeah, I have been doing it for a fair while, but in very different roles as well. So it's given me a really a different view, perhaps because I've worked in it through different roles, and been in businesses that have been acquired themselves. So that really helps. I think that point I made before about change management and project management being intertwined, yes, but different
Mm,
is vital, and it should be really part of every conversation that you're undertaking in regards to your 100-day plan. Is make sure that you've got someone who's actually managing the change as well as the plan. So that's
mm.
that's that's a really important aspect. Um, I've seen a lot of people forget to have fun. You're not going to go into this, and it is not going to be rosy every day. It is hard work. There is no ifs and buts about it. Acquisitions are not easy. You're dealing with a whole new business that you're trying to integrate, and people that you're trying to bring along with you. So don't forget to have some fun along the way with the people that you're working with in your change management team. You're doing this because you thought it was a great opportunity. So when you're in those really tough situations, when you're making tough decisions, just remember that there is value in this, and to celebrate when the time is right, and have a laugh because you'll need it. Um, so it's really important to know that it's not going to be smooth sailing, and if it is smooth sailing, there's something going on underneath the surface that you need to take to take awareness of. And I guess the other thing is pace and lead. Give people time to breathe. Give the businesses time to breathe as they're moving forward. So yes, you might want to change everything immediately, but
Mm,
separate it out. Spend some time pacing. Spend some time leading, and make sure that you're giving people the um, space to come along with you. I
mm,
think they're the key overall aspects. And sometimes I think when I'm talking about this, I make it sound like there's no tough decisions to make. There absolutely are tough decisions. Um,
yeah.
be really aware of those tough decisions. Don't space them out. Don't try and hide them. Just make sure that you're communicating, that you've got fair reason behind the tough decisions that you're making.
Mm,
And that's all about leadership and respect more than
yeah.
anything else. So, yeah.
Yeah. Such great wisdom. I'll never forget in that precise context. I always think one of the things that I learned in us working together on acquisitions was that people are adults and they can deal very well with information they know.
Mm-hmm.
It's the information that you hide from them, thinking, oh, they're not, well, if I tell them that, they're going to worry about it. And so on. It's like people are super smart and they're adults. And I remember, in one of the acquisitions that we did, we had some big savings that we needed to make, and some of
Mm.
those savings were going to come from people. And so what we did was to actually be super transparent with the business who had not had a previously transparent leadership approach, and so they didn't know what the numbers were. They didn't know that actually
Mm.
the business's profitability was like practically zero, and that was shared with them very quickly to create, partly because that's how we led,
Mm-hmm.
and that was our style and our culture, but also to bring them on board to go, hey guys, you realize this business is pretty much not making any money, and in the absence of us actually making some savings, there is no capacity to invest in its future growth and opportunity for you guys, and to do new things and
Mm-hmm.
serve new clients and take on new products and make everything better and all the stuff that we all want. And they absolutely got it. And they
Mm.
were so incredibly behind us and supportive when we were making really difficult decisions about, people that, some roles that were not going to continue in the business, because we'd brought them in and we'd give them a real sort of transparent and authentic rally. We didn't try to hide it. We didn't surprise them. We didn't,
Mm.
walk in one day and just, sack a whole bunch of people and all of a sudden go, okay, everyone, let me just tell you what we just did. It was like, they
Mm-hmm.
knew they knew change was coming, and then once the change had been prepared and people were ready for it, we made change. We made it quickly,
Mm.
so it wasn't prolonged and painful for people. And I really took that out of a number of our experiences. But I always try to encourage founders to remember that people are adults,
Mm-hmm.
and they do a great job. They do far better job than you think they're going to. And quite often it's relationship building, it's
Mm-hmm.
trust building, that you let them in if things aren't all rosy. You don't have to hide them. You don't have to hide it from them when things aren't rosy. Like, tell them, hey, you know what? things aren't rosy.
Yeah.
Tell them you've got a plan. Talk to them about the plan, whatever the plan is.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to shelter them from it, because they'd rather not be surprised.
Yeah, and then
Uh,
it also allows them the opportunity to come up with ideas themselves. When we've talked to people about situations where there's negative impacts or there's issues that need to be addressed, you'd be surprised the number of people that come up afterwards and say, "Hey, this is an impact that I have." They've all got lives, so they're all willing
yeah,
to make decisions for themselves.
yeah.
Or had you thought about that? And sometimes they come up with the best ideas. So don't to hide behind it just because you think people won't buy in. In fact, it's as I said before, it's about leadership and respect. So by allowing people to express and understand and be part of the decision, it
Mm.
actually creates a much better environment or culture for the business moving forward.
Yep, couldn't agree more. Um, Nick, I would love to keep asking you questions, but I'm also conscious of how much brain span people have to listen to a podcast, and so I know I'm going to have to shut up very shortly. Is there any question that you on this topic that you really wish that I'd asked you that I haven't yet?
Mm,
Um,
that's an excellent question. Um, I think, the overall question that we started with, which
mm,
is, how not to mess it up.
yeah,
Um,
I said screw it up. That's very, very
I
kind and
was,
diplomatic. You can say screw it up on a
I'm more
podcast.
polite than you. So, how not to mess up the
Yeah.
acquisition, and how not to mess it up, is to check your mindset, your approach. So always when you're going through this transition process, which can be 3 months full on, 6 months at about 70%, and then it starts just being part of change, starts being part of the businesses, is just check your mindset. Are you stepping back? Are you taking a helicopter approach? Are you viewing the whole business and all the people within it? Because we get so stuck in the weeds sometimes that we forget that helicopter view. So
Mm,
if there's one way of messing it up, it's just getting in that lane and just doing what you've got to do,
mm,
and forgetting to just hop up in your helicopter and have a
mm.
look every once in a while.
I love that, because when you think about it, no matter what kind of business it is, they're all people businesses. You're
Mm,
not buying an asset. I mean, yes, when you get into all financials and you're looking at numbers and you're like, oh yeah, we can make an extra, 200 grand here and times five, okay, that's an extra $1 million of enterprise value, blah, blah, blah. And we're thinking of it as an asset quite often as
mhm,
business leaders. But when it comes to the crunch, these are people. You're buying an opportunity to be honored with the gift of leading these people and helping them get the most out of the next chapter. And so you have to remember that they're humans, they're not assets, and they have lives and they have opinions and they have views, and they're not going to like everything that you do. And so you actually have to engage them probably in the same way, hopefully, that you've engaged your existing team. They're a new team that you have to build trust and relationship with. So
Absolutely.
so fast. There's so much about leadership in here. Nick, I'd love to acknowledge you. You have taught me so much over the years, and I know that you and I have probably got about 20 podcasts in us if we were going to cover all things people and all things I've learned. But one of the things that I really have valued about our experience together is that you always made me a better leader. You're probably one of the people that helped me be one of the most courageous, certainly helped me be the most courageous in my leadership that I'd ever been in any previous time in the past. And so thank you for what you've done for me personally. I continue to talk about you all the time to anyone who will listen to me as one of the most four influential people of my life, particularly when it comes to my professional career as a CEO. So I hope we get another opportunity and you let me. I know you make me chase you a lot because you'll probably avoid it, but I hope you let me bring you back on the podcast sometime in the future to talk about some other topics that I'd love to pick your brains on.
Absolutely. And I don't like compliments, so he did it on a podcast. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Nick, if people wanted to follow along, if people wanted to connect with you or ask you a question or follow along with Adventure Co and the journey that you guys are going on, where would you direct them to?
Probably LinkedIn's a good option, or also you can connect with me from the Adventure Co website.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nick. Folks, I really hope you enjoyed today. And if it's raised questions for you about acquisitions that you're doing or an acquisition that you've just done, and you've got some questions that you want to ask, just email us at questions@scaleupspodcast.com. If I can't answer it, I'm certainly going to get Nick to answer it, and I'll find a way to get that answer back to you. Obviously, if you valued today and you want to hear more, make sure you subscribe, leave us a review. That's always very helpful. If you're not driving, take a screenshot, send it to somebody who you know would love to hear a bit more about this topic. It just helps us expand our impact and who we can help in the world. But that's it for me today. You have been listening to the Scale Ups podcast. I'm Sean Steele. And thank you so much, Nicola Fowkes, for entertaining me and finally getting on this podcast.
My absolute pleasure.
Look forward to speaking with you again next week, folks. Thanks very much, Nick. G'day everyone, just a couple of quick things before you go. If you have questions that you'd love myself or an upcoming guest to tackle about challenges that you're facing in scaling your business, please just jump straight on the website, scaleupspodcast.com. You can record your message straight from your mobile by hitting the button on the right-hand side of the page, or you can just email them the old-fashioned way, questions@scaleupspodcast.com. And just a quick reminder, nothing we spoke about today constitutes financial or business advice. If you are considering making big decisions in your business, seek out a professional who can look at your situation in detail and make sure you're getting sound, personalised advice. Thanks for listening. Look forward to being back in your podcast feed next week.